Shabbat Shalom. As many of you may already know, growing up in Netzer, Australia, the Reform Zionist youth movement in my home country was a significant and impactful part of my upbringing. What you might not know, however, is that part of that experience was having the privilege of being the camp director one summer. I'm never going to forget that opening day, as the staff and campers stood around us in one big circle, and myself and my second in charge welcomed everyone on site and laid some of the ground rules for the week ahead. It was quite surreal, to be honest, after everything that led to that moment. The years of working up to that point in the movement, the many long days and nights of planning and organising, from the buses to the phone calls with the parents to the training of the counsellors and so on. To see everybody physically there with smiles on their faces, it was all so worth it, and I could hardly believe my eyes. That being said, I also knew that it would be my last staff on camp, after 3 summers and 3 winters as a counsellor. So this is the first of 3 stories of mine, as well as 3 pieces of wisdom from others, to reflect upon the journey that was and its impact, including the journey from the future until now, as we have several of our Camp George families here with us this Shabbat. I want to start with the first piece of wisdom from an article that I read from the Union for Reform Judaism, or URJ, entitled 6 Powerful Reasons to Send Your Child to Jewish Summer Camp. It was the 5th reason that resonated here, which was that camp addresses the camper as a whole person. So by that, they mean that children learn confidence, skill building, and socialization by living in community. This might be through learning to manage a diverse group of peers, facing new situations, and overcoming challenges on a daily basis, which results in enormous growth for the camper, enormous personal growth. So I'll illustrate with my second story. At the end of every day on camp, the leaders would gather together once all the campers had been bidden goodnight to debrief from the day that had been and to look to the day ahead. On that same camp that I was the Rosh Machaneh, the director, during one of those late night meetings, I was trying to work through our agenda and hold court, so to speak, but the rest of the staff just kept talking and generally being disruptive. So we know that every day on camp feels like a year, so they were exhausted and had 0 attention span left. But they were driving me up the wall because they were the ones who kept saying that they wanted to get through the meeting, which is a little hard to do if you're not actually listening. Eventually, my patience gave out, and instead of yelling, I tried something I had never done before, and in my frustration, I got dangerously silent to the point where you could hear a pin drop, and said something to the effect of, "You all have 5 minutes, get up, take a break, and I'll see you right back here." Unbelievably, it worked, and every single staffer was a little shell-shocked. They got up to do whatever they needed to do to get the jitters out and were back within those same 5 minutes. So even though it was a story about getting uncharacteristically angry and having to discipline my fellow staff, which was not something enjoyable, it's still something that comes to mind to this day. Because I can tell you that without camp, the confidence it built, the skills it taught, the relationships I had built which allowed for that moment to happen, someone like myself who is much more naturally introverted would not have had the tools to handle that situation. The other powerful impact of camp is the immersive Jewish community one experiences, whether up at Maple Lake in Parry Sound or at Valley Homestead in country Australia. When we say immersive Jewish community, it can be thought of as this broad idea that nowhere else do campers have the opportunity to experience Judaism infused into everyday life and have it reinforced by a community of, in our case, specifically Reformed Jewish peers. To come back to our URJ article, campers are exposed to Jewish role models, adult Jewish role models and peers alike, and Jewish friends from different places and different walks of life. These Jewish connections in every direction are extremely powerful. More than that, campers experience joy in a Jewish community, develop that self-confidence we spoke about as Jews, and forge long-lasting connections. So our second piece of wisdom, a 2019 article in the Canadian Jewish News by Norma Baumel-Joseph, no relation to our own Lisa Eisen-Baumel, articulates this best when she writes, "Campers learn some Hebrew words, children learn some songs and remember them with a strong sense of presence. They discover that Saturday is Shabbat and know that whatever ritual is observed that day is Jewish, and that their ancestors held that day to be sacred. These words and songs and practices hold a place in the campers' world that is perhaps unexpected but prized. History and heritage gain a nostalgic place in their hearts and minds, which is seldom lost. Jewishness is embedded in fun. Imagine that. At camp, being Jewish is shared in a friendly atmosphere, not learned through homework, but experienced with friends and acquaintances." So put differently, there's a reason why I can still remember the Netzer song or could sing along to many of the chants at Camp George, even when close to 10 years of being away from the camp world. The final and maybe the most compelling impact upon the camper themselves, which lasts far beyond the confines of the campsite, is the strong sense of Jewish commitment. So we'll now turn to our third piece of wisdom, a study commissioned by the Foundation for Jewish Camp back in 2011, which studied the evidence of overnight camp on 26 Jewish populations and their level of Jewish engagement as adults. Perhaps unsurprisingly, they found that a camp had a significant impact on engendering positive Jewish feelings or positive feelings towards being Jewish, reinforcing that combination of factors such as friends, the totally immersive environment, and the sense of adventure, so all which we've touched upon already. However, we can take another couple of small statistics. They found that 19% of non-campers were statistically likely to feel very emotionally attached to Israel, compared to 30% of campers. I want to say that this doesn't take into account other categories of that, such as somewhat attached or quite strongly attached, but it's still 55% more weighted on that strong emotion scale. If 20% of campers grew up attending synagogue at least monthly, then 29% who did go to camp attended synagogue more than monthly, which translates to almost double the likelihood of regular synagogue attendance if one had a camp experience. So additionally, if 52% of Jewish professionals started out in their field when they were young adults, so they started doing some form of professional Jewish practice in high school or college, 35% of those professionals got their start as camp counselors. In other words, according to this report, camp was and is the single greatest pipeline into Jewish professional sector work, and more than that, to an enduring connection with Jewish practice and ritual into adulthood, from the likelihood of synagogue attendance to a sense of attachment to Israel. So, time for a final story. I've spoken of it before, some of you might have seen it, but in my office there is a photo on my shelf from my first year in rabbinical school. It's of several of my classmates and myself sitting in this gorgeous garden on HUC's, Hebrew Union College's Jerusalem campus, after we'd decided to hold a Kabbalat Shabbat service celebrating the official beginning of our academic year. We're all sitting on the ground, we're relaxed, we're positioned around this beautiful fountain that they have there, and my friend and I are smiling happily whilst they play guitar. This photo encapsulates everything that camp can be credited for, the path that life led me down. Leading a Kabbalat Shabbat service with beloved friends in Israel at the start of the journey towards becoming a rabbi, living out Jewish values, Jewish joy, and Jewish commitment. So put simply, without camp, I would not be here today. But that doesn't mean, please don't take this wrong, it does not mean that camp does not need to equal every single camper being a Jewish professional. Do not hear this that way. Where its magic truly lies is in empowering our children to blossom, an image we find in our Shabbat's parasha, Korach, as Aaron's staff bursts into flower, a symbol of overcoming challenge and adversity. I talked about that rebellion earlier, and becoming fully who you are meant to be as a result. It is, furthermore, a sign of Aaron's commitment to his people and his faith as the high priest. And of course, he is living and wandering within a roaming desert encampment. So to you, our campers, we want to take this opportunity to bless you as you go on your way and find your own way along this incredibly exciting and fulfilling journey ahead with Tfilat HaDerech, the traveler's prayer. So maybe our campers and their families can stand. Maybe if you go on another camp, you can do that too. You don't have to say anything. Okay. All right. That includes you. Okay. Yehi ratzon milefanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu שתליכנו לשלום ותעזרנו להגיע למחוז חפצנו, לחיים ולשמחה ולשלום. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו, ותצילנו מכל צרה, ותשלח ברכה בכל מעשי ידינו, ומעשינו יכבדו את שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני, שומר ישראל לעד. May it be your will, our God and God of our ancestors, that you lead us in peace and help us reach our destination safely, joyfully, and peacefully. May you protect us, or you, our campers, on your leaving and on your return, and rescue us from any harm. And may you bless the work of our hands, and may our deeds merit honor for you, our God. Praise to you, Adonai, the protector of Israel. Ken Yehi Ratzon.